So you are joining us today for Design Thinking in the Everyday Classroom. This is part of the Inspire series from Bridge Innovate. Bridge Innovate is a business consulting firm. We do capacity building. We also have an in-person design studio in Chattanooga, and we have a virtual studio that is supported by Sprint Base. Something you'll hear quite a bit about today is our Bright Spark program, which is part of our Innovation for Good division, which allows us to do work that inspires creative confidence. So today you will hear from Julia Cagle, and I'm going to share her slides in just a second here. Oh, there we go. So Julia, we can click right to the slide that has your beautiful shot on it and your bio. There we go. This is Julia Cagle. Julia is a media specialist and educator at the Dalton Academy. She is joining us with over 15 years of educational experience, having taught students grades pre-K through 12th and worked to develop district-wide programming in student entrepreneurship. Julia believes that the learning environment should be student-driven, allowing imagination to propel the learning process. Students should be free to ask questions and dream big. One of the most important things as an educator can give to a student is the freedom to make a tough decision. Julia will show more about that with us today. She holds 2 bachelors, one in psychology, one in sociology. Julia has a master's in special education and an EDS in instructional technology. She lives in Dalton, Georgia with her husband, Mitchell, and 3 children and 2 dogs. So we are so excited to welcome Julia to speak with us today. As Julia is presenting, please feel free to share questions in the chat. We will shout them out. And from here, I will hand it over to our special guest, Julia.
Well, hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is, it's really an honor to be asked to come on here. So I hope to kind of fill your head with a lot of the things that I've learned over the last 15 years. And really, if I'm being honest, it's all the years before that too, that have kind of culminated. And I hope to maybe leave you with something that you can start with your students today, or at least spark something that you can work on developing. So thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm a media specialist at Dalton Public Schools. Currently, I am at the Dalton Academy. It is our second high school in Dalton Public Schools. We serve students grades 10 through 12, and we are also in the same building as Dalton Junior High School. And so we also have our grades 8 and 9 for all of Dalton Public Schools in this building also. So it's kind of a unique blend of students, but it's a really great opportunity because we have students all the way from about 14 years old, all the way up to about 18 years old, and we get to do some really fun things with them. So today I am speaking with you about design thinking, and really through the lens of the everyday classroom. Sometimes design thinking is not always attainable in every single classroom every single day. And so what I have learned from being a content area teacher and now a media specialist, some different things that I've learned to still get that design thinking into your content classes. So initially as an educator, this design thinking cycle stood out to me. My mom is an educator herself, a gifted educator. And so this idea of creative learning and authentic learning has always been ingrained. And so when I started teaching, I started off teaching special education students. And I knew early on that in order to appropriately meet the needs of these students, I would have to engage them in a different way. And so design thinking stood out to me. And that idea of how can we use design thinking in class, in teaching, and creating those experiences. So through the years, and when you look at especially design thinking in a content area class, sometimes that's a little bit of a tough sell for administrators. How are you going to achieve and meet your standards? How are your students going to still take the state testing at the end of the year? So through this investigation, really what we're talking about with design thinking are mindsets and skill sets. Now, these particular mindsets and skill sets come from a company, Venture Lab, that I work with a lot out of Texas. They're out of Austin, Texas. But we kind of see these same mindsets and skill sets in some other programming also. But if you look through here, these are the skills, these are what we want students demonstrating through the design thinking process. We want them to be empathetic and to be human-centered in their thinking. We want them to persist through problems. It seems like in today's world, we have an epidemic of students that just want to turn something in as a first draft and that be it. So the idea of never having your first draft is never accepted. Collaborating with each other is a huge one. Being creative. Sometimes at the high school level, we don't see a lot of creativity, at least as big of creativity as we see in some of our elementary students. And so when you think about what do you really want your students to achieve, sometimes it's a little bit easier to think about it in these mindsets and skill sets. So this was my lens, and this is what I wanted to approach with my students. When you're looking at mindsets and skill sets, this is also a great way to have a real conversation with students about who they are, what their particular strengths are, and then what are some of their limitations. And then you can always flip that. These are my personal strengths and limitations. And then here are my peers. Here's how I know how to work with someone based on their strengths and limitations. So coming from these mindsets and skill sets, the why really stands out to me. And I always try to instill the why in my students. They ask me, why are we doing this? Why are we learning this? And to me, the why of instilling design thinking is a no-brainer. Now, this statistic at the top, you might have heard before. It comes from a Dell Technologies study in 2017, but 85% of the jobs that are going to exist in the year 2030 have not been invented yet. I mean, let that sink in. So no longer can we have our students learning something specific and then being completely prepared for college and career, whatever happens after high school when they leave us. They have to be able to think in the moment. They have to be able to be resourceful enough to understand what is happening around them and to make rapid decisions and change. So the why, it's more needed than ever. What we're also finding in schools is that it could be potentially during pandemic years or whatever you want to say it's from. We have a lot of students that are living in the now. They're not living in the future. They're not even living in the past. They're living in the present, the right now. And so design thinking itself is about human-centered, everyday life kind of challenges. And so when you start appealing to students in this way, by dealing with real life problems, you've got them hooked initially. You've got that engagement. So as we move forward, like I've said, I have taught as a content area teacher. I taught in the ELA classroom for 9 years. And of course, we still need to be held to standards, right? Our administrators are going to come in our building. Which standards are you teaching today? And really, if you look through standards, design thinking is everywhere. They're embedded. If you look at our Common Core or state standards, of course, 21st century standards, gifted standards, and so forth. I did a really quick search the other day, and I just pulled up kindergarten. Right here in a kindergarten standard, with guidance and support from adults, we want students to use a variety of tools to produce and publish writing, including digital tools in collaboration with peers. So these are 5-year-olds that we expect to be able to collaborate and work well with each other while also producing and publishing writing, which is a creative form. This year, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in coming slides, but Georgia has rolled out new entrepreneurship framework. And so for all CTAE pathways, those teachers are expected to be teaching entrepreneurship. And so we're seeing more movement at the state level to really enforce entrepreneurship, which of course, encompasses design thinking and all of these mindsets and skill sets that we've been talking about. If you look at math, because I certainly hear that from a lot of my teachers, well, how can I do design thinking in math? Well, mathematical practices, this one right here says we want students to persevere in problem solving, think abstractly, and we want them to construct arguments, critique, and have attention to precision. Wow, right? All of these mindsets and skill sets that we're talking about. All right. So why I'm here, well, maybe why I was invited to talk about my experience. So initially, when I got into design thinking as a learning tool, I got into it through competition based. And the first one I got really heavily involved with students was Bright Spark. So it's really great to be here and share about that. And if you're unfamiliar with the challenges that Bright Spark provides, it is all about design thinking. So throughout the year, you'll have several opportunities for your students to get into the meat of problem solving. These pictures over here on the left, I have secondary students in the redesigning a high school of the future. And so this was very, very relevant for them as seventh graders. They were able to, we went to our local high school. They were able to shadow high school students for the day and really think about what do they want their high school experience to be. And the elementary students down below there, when I worked with elementary students, they were working on food scarcity. So what's great about these challenges is the students are front loaded with a real world problem, and then they have to work together to find those solutions. So I was able to facilitate this through my content level class. I went to my administrator and I said, hey, I want my students to be involved in this competition. Here are the benefits. And then we went through my standards, and we were able to make sure that there were standards that aligned to everything. We had no problem finding standards that aligned. And I was able to structure this where students did Bright Spark 2 days a week. And what I did from there is I think at the time I had about 10 teams, and we had a school level competition. So then we were able to wind down those teams that to the school level winning teams. And then those teams were moved forward to go to actual the Bright Spark competition. So Bright Spark is an incredible way to get students involved in this. Something else that I'm very, very excited and passionate about to talk about is Pbs. And Pbs is right now it's local in Dalton, and it's for local area schools. It's the Dalton Innovation Accelerator. Pbs started off as like a Shark Tank competition is the easiest way to describe that. And it was for adults and children. And they could come up with a business idea and come and pitch that for hopefully win cash prizes, business acceleration, office space, that kind of thing. So without giving all the background of all of that, we have evolved Pbs. And now we have an adult track, but now we have a student track. And that's what I do a lot of work with in our schools. So students can still, if they have a business idea, enter that business idea for the chance of a cash prize. But what we've coupled with that now is curriculum. And so what I do a lot is I work with teachers in my district and implementing entrepreneurship curriculum. And that way we can prepare our students throughout the school year before they enter into the competition that will now be structured in the summer. It's very, very exciting for students. To give you a small little example, the boys in the picture here at the top, they are winners from this year. They have let me start over. Their business is called Bowbed, and they have designed a comfort grip for crossbows, for like archery or hunting. And this was a particular market that I knew nothing about, but this particular product is not readily available, at least in the way that they've designed it. And so they've really taken off with this business idea, but it was their idea. We just gave them the challenge. We said, hey, can you come up with a business idea? And these are your requirements, for the competition. And that's what they wanted to come up with. So they have won, they won $1,000 to put back into their business. And then we're continue to work with them this year. So another competition-based programming that I have been heavily involved in for many years is Odyssey of the Mind, which some people have heard of, but it's a little bit obscure for some other people. So the best way to describe Odyssey of the Mind is it is a creativity competition. So students in grades 3 through 12, and actually it goes through college and even military, and we even have primary grades too. So even our younger children, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade can still enter, but they're not competitive. But it's a creativity competition. They choose a problem to solve, and they work within a budget limit. And then one of the big things about Odyssey of the Mind, it is absolutely against the rules for any adult influence. Even so much where if you're at a competition, an adult cannot tie a bow on your costume. Everything has to be student done. So the sets, the scripts, everything that you're presenting would have to be student done. Now, the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about the competition-based design thinking is because this, especially for teachers that are getting their feet wet and trying to get students involved in these kind of activities, this is a great way to do that. Because these organizations have the structures, they have the challenges, they usually have, people and other things in place to help support you. And this is absolutely the way I got into design thinking with students, whether it be in my classroom or even when I was at the elementary level. I broadened this to a whole grade level. So I had all of 5th grade do Bright Spark, and it was totally achievable and it was totally doable to get kids in this kind of work. Something else to consider, because I've been talking a little bit about design thinking as a curriculum, and there are opportunities out there for teachers to go ahead and start working with curriculum. So I'll talk a little bit about Pbs and the curriculum we're going to be using, and it is from that Venture Lab, so that company out of Texas, Austin, Texas, Venture Lab. And so we have partnered with them, we have secured the curriculum, but now we are working with our teacher leads to fully embed that curriculum in our elementary and secondary schools. If you're unfamiliar with JA, Junior Achievement is a great partner. They're all things entrepreneurship and design thinking. We're excited at the Dalton Academy to now provide 3DE, which is kind of like a subsect of Junior Achievement. And what 3DE is, it's a instructional framework dealing in case methodology for high school students. And so students in grades 9 through 12 work through cases throughout the year. Now, these are very relevant cases. So for example, we're going to have our 9th grade students this year at the Dalton Academy work with employees at Shaw, and they will work with employees at Shaw to solve real problems happening at Shaw. And now there's a lot more to talk about with 3DE and JA, but it is a tiered approach. And so as students go throughout their high school career, they gain more competencies and work with more and more business professionals. So by the time that they graduate their senior year, and I could be getting the number wrong, but they will be working with over 20 real business professionals. And at their senior year, they're actually interns inside these businesses. So it's a really exciting opportunity for students to do that. Something else that we kind of see more on the West Coast, but the New Tech Network is also similar to 3DE. It's an instructional framework going into schools and embedding that entrepreneurship and design thinking. And then I spoke a little bit about the Georgia DOE has now pushed out entrepreneurship framework, which I think is really, really exciting. And so that's gonna spark more conversation. We're gonna have more teachers that have not really talked about entrepreneurship and design thinking before, talking about that now with their students. All right. So, maybe you're telling me, hey, all right, we don't have the curriculum in our school and I'm not ready for all that competition stuff. What can I do in my classroom today? What can I do? So again, going off from my experience, one of the most powerful projects I've ever done with students was a mural project. And so this photo that you see up there, we had students at the high school level. This was a collaborative cross-curricular between English language arts and social studies. And we wanted students to learn about Dalton history, so learn about the history of their community. And we gave them a challenge. We said, what would happen if teenagers were given the opportunity to create a mural that honored their community? And so the mural you see there is the finished mural, and we were able to partner with a muralist, Kevin Bate, out of Chattanooga. He was amazing, by the way, if you ever work with Kevin. But the students painted the mural. Okay, Kevin did not paint this mural. He came in and he was able to project the image and then sketch it. And so it was basically a paint by number. But this was more or less a culminating event for a lot of months of research. Students learned about Dalton history. They learned about the particular people that had influence in our community. We took many field trips to talk to people, and then they narrowed down these particular 5 heroes' faces that we see on the wall. And so they were able to argue and critique and rationalize why they chose these particular people to go on the wall. And then, yes, the fun painting, got to happen. And it was an amazing process to see, because in within 2 weeks, they had this mural up on the wall. So sometimes we call this project-based learning. And that is certainly the lens that we had when we did this lesson. But the emphasis is student choice and relevancy. Look within your community. What is happening, or what can you capitalize on that your students can be a part of? We've taken students to city council meetings and had them talk about different issues in their community. Students are invested in what's happening around them if we give them the opportunity. Something else to think about to kind of piggyback up or off of that is about observation. So often kids, they don't realize the particular problems that are happening around them. And it could be something as simple as, a mouse on your computer or some other technology that's just not working appropriately. So if we engage students in an activity where they're having to notice their surroundings and observe things to fix problems, that's a really easy way into design thinking. Reflection is a huge thing in, as we look at design thinking and entrepreneurship. So as an instructor, you should be having a reflection at the end of every class period. It could be super quick, it could be 5 minutes, a quick ticket out the door, but you need to have your students actively engaging in reflection. What have they learned? What could they have done better? What do they need to know for the future? And then going back on that idea of learning as being iterative, students should never turn in one copy of something and that be it. I'm sorry. And if you say, hey, it's one copy and then it's done, maybe you need to reassess what you're assigning to students. Maybe that's not something you need to grade. Maybe that's something that can be put to the side. So whenever you give students something to turn in, make sure that it is something that needs to be curated, something that students need to put investment into, their own personal stamp on. And, and that's the stuff that you grade. Go back to classroom choice, collaboration, critical thinking. All of these were deeply embedded into my content classes in a constant. Students knew that when they came in my classroom, I wasn't talking a lot, they were talking. Something I've gotten into recently that students have just run with is podcasting. I also do some work with a podcasting competition in town, but students have amazed me with podcasting. You give them the freedom to talk about a topic that they want to talk about, and you give them the time and the right tools to create a podcast. I have been blown away, absolutely blown away. Students, by and large, talk about social justice issues, and that is a great way to get students engaged in that initial empathy phase. If if they can think about what are they passionate about, is it animals? Is it human rights? Whatever that is, and then you can start developing problem solution from there. Another way to think about that is videography, getting kids filming and making movies. Different creative projects. Even something as simple as a blank white piece of paper, and then getting students to fill that with whatever criteria could be a creative project. And then something that we've had a lot of success here at Dalton Junior High are speaking panels. So we're really excited about this. Last year, we did a Black History Month panel, and we brought in members from our community, and we had students come in and were able to ask questions and engage that way. We're going to do a Hispanic Heritage panel this month in October. So we're very excited about that. And again, that's all about empathy, bringing people together and identifying issues. So my role is tech, like media specialist. I kind of geek out on tech stuff. So as I was planning this session, what are my top 10 tech tools when you look at design thinking and entrepreneurship? I'll kind of run through these real quickly. You can read, but learning management system is always my go-to. Now, in our district, we use Canvas, but I know Google Classroom is huge. There's other learning management systems out there. I highly encourage you, if you're working with students in this capacity, use a learning management system. It will, in terms of communication, organization, and just efficiency, it makes your life a lot better. And then to back up with that, students need to engage in Google Drive for Google, or if you're a Microsoft district, 365. So for the saving features, for the auto saves, for the sharing features, it just, again, makes life way more efficient. Padlet, if you don't use Padlet, it's kind of an oldie but a goodie, but it is tried and true. So you can create your Padlets. They're a great way to capture brainstorming or capture notes, and then you can embed that into your learning management system. Canva, I sing Canva's praises. I'm using Canva for this presentation, and then kids really learn it very, very easily. So it's a great way, especially if you're doing marketing with students, or if you want them to create a logo, that's a really easy way to engage students. Hey, get on there and create a logo for your business. But Canva has so much more available. I talked a little bit about Odyssey of the Mind. Odyssey of the Mind has a subsect of their competition called Spontaneous, and Spontaneous is a really quick problem that you give to kids that you want them to solve in the moment. So it could be something, trying to look, okay, so I've got a calculator. So I could give them a calculator, and I might say, what else could this calculator be? It's now my surfboard, it's my hat. But what these very, very quick 5-10 minute little challenges I use for students, and is that first 5 or 10 minutes in class. They come into class, I've got a quick little challenge for you, but it's in the effort of, I need you thinking, and I need you thinking creatively, and I want you engaged in class. So the spontaneous problems are my go-to with students. Bloxels is another great resource. It is a creative based, students can create their own video games, but that doesn't even give it justice. It's the sky's the limit. Students can create video games, they can create characters, they can create businesses. There's just so much. So it's manipulative, hands-on, but then they put it into an app. So you get both sides of that. Breakout EDU is a great one to use with students. You do have to have a subscription for Bloxels and Breakout EDU, but Breakout EDU is like the breakout games, and they come with a lot of preset breakout games that you can pull from there, or you can start from scratch. Little Bits is early circuitry. So you have a ton of little things for students to manipulate, and they also have a huge bank of lessons and resources for teachers. Pbs Design Squad. Oh my goodness, this was a lifesaver in elementary school with my students there. You could put kids on this website, and they have free choice of finding any of the things that they want to make and create. And they are vast, all sorts of things they're creating. They could create some like a marshmallow gun, or they could create a t-shirt. I mean, there's just so many things on there, and it has directions and videos and shows kids how to create things. And then Venture Lab. I can't say enough great things about Venture Lab. You can go on Venture Lab and you can find not just curriculum, but you can find support. They have a great blog, and they have a social media presence too. So these were just kind of my go-to as I was thinking about tech tools that are really exciting for me. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. It's a little bit unusual for me, so I'm really glad that I get to share this, and I love connecting with teachers. So much of what we do is trying to, find that one person that knows something that we don't, right? As educators, we don't know everything. So if you would love to connect with me, if you have an idea about any of the things I talked about, please reach out to me, and maybe we can get together, maybe we can get some of our students together. And good luck with your year, guys. I hope it all goes well.
Julia, thank you so much. This time flew by for me. The culture of innovation that you've inspired is incredible, and it's so exciting to see. I couldn't help but think about all of those tools and all of the implications they have, especially for our students participating in the Invention Challenge this October. We hear all the time, I have this great idea, but how do I prototype it? And all of the tools that you shared are tools that students can use to build not just low fidelity prototypes, but really like prototypes that show their idea in such an elevated way. So I'm so excited for the implications for Dalton, but also the implications of what you've learned for all of our attendees here today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. So we are right at time. Julia's email is in the chat here. Always feel free to reach out to hello@Bridge Innovate, and we can connect you with our speakers. We can answer any questions about the Bright Spark competition, how to get started with innovation for students. So with that, we will close out our webinar. Thank you again to Julia for joining us and for sharing all of your insights. This recording will be available if you want to share it with friends or come back to revisit some of the tools that Julia shared. Thank you all.